I never thought I would end up in a fight with a group that claimed to protect the neighborhood. But this story is not just about a ranch, a board, or even money. It is about control, pride, and standing up for what is yours. From the very first day, my ranch was my pride. I worked day and night to build it. I poured my sweat, my savings, and my soul into this land. To me, it wasn't just property. It was freedom. It was peace. It was the dream I had worked my whole life for. But the HOA, they saw it differently. They saw rules. They saw power. They saw control. And one day, they came knocking, ready to take what I had earned with my own 2 hands. At first, it started with letters. You know the kind, printed, official-looking, written in cold words that feel like knives. Violation notice. Failure to comply. Final warning. I remember holding those papers and laughing. I thought it was a joke. After all, who finds a man for the color of his barn? Who complains about the size of his fence when the nearest house is half a mile away? But this was no joke. This was war. The HOA wanted to shrink me down, to break me. They fined me for grass growing too tall. They fined me for having too many animals on my land. They even fined me for hosting a family barbecue. Imagine that, being told you can't invite your own family to your own land because it's against the rules. Every letter made me angrier. Every demand made me feel smaller. And yet, deep down, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to bow. This was my ranch, my life, and no board of self-appointed rulers was going to take that away from me. But the pressure kept building. They didn't stop. They pushed harder. They sent threats. They said they would take me to court. They said they had the power to seize my ranch if I didn't pay. That was the day I realized something important. These people didn't want compliance. They wanted control. And if I gave in once, I would never be free again. So I did something they never expected. I started fighting back. Not with anger, but with strategy. I began reading their bylaws, word for word. I studied their rules like a lawyer. I spent late nights highlighting, taking notes, and planning my every move. The more I read, the more I saw something clear. They weren't as powerful as they pretended to be. Their strength was built on fear, on silence, on neighbors who didn't question them. I decided I wouldn't be silent. I started showing up to their meetings. At first, they didn't like it. They rolled their eyes. They whispered. They tried to brush me off. But I kept showing up. Every single meeting, I was there. Asking questions. Demanding answers. Reading their own rules out loud to their faces. The board members began to squirm. They weren't used to being challenged. They weren't used to someone throwing their own words back at them. One night, I stood up in the meeting and said, "You can fine me all you want. You can send me letters, threats, whatever. But you cannot take my home. You cannot scare me into giving up what I worked for." The room went silent. Neighbors stared. Some nodded. For the first time, the board realized they didn't scare me. But that wasn't the end. They tried harder. They filed lawsuits. They pushed me into courtrooms. They wanted to drain my money, drain my energy, drain my spirit. And yes, there were nights I almost broke. Nights I sat in the dark, staring at stacks of papers, wondering if it was worth it. Was my ranch worth all this pain? Was freedom worth fighting when the whole system seemed stacked against me? But every time doubt crept in, I remembered why I started. I remembered the first sunrise I watched over my land. I remembered the first horse I brought home. I remembered the smile on my kids' faces when they ran across the open field. This wasn't just dirt and fences. This was a dream. And dreams are worth fighting for. So I made a bold move. While the HOA wasted money on lawyers, I was saving. Every check, every penny, every dollar I earned went into a separate account. Quietly. Patiently. I didn't tell anyone. I just saved. And then, one day, I found out something shocking. The HOA clubhouse, their crown jewel, their place of power, it was up for sale. They were drowning in debt from all their legal battles, and they needed money fast. Do you see the twist here? They spent years trying to take my ranch, but now their own house was falling apart. And I had cash in hand. The day I walked into that office and placed my offer in cash was the day the tables turned. The same board members who sent me letters, who dragged me into court, who tried to scare me into silence, they now had to look me in the eye as I bought their clubhouse. Neighbors gasped. The board froze. And me? I smiled. Because in that moment, the power shifted. They could no longer touch me. They could no longer control me. I didn't just protect my ranch. I took their fortress. But you know what the real victory was? It wasn't the building. It wasn't even the land. It was the lesson. Fear only works when you let it in. Power only matters when you hand it over. I refused to hand mine away, and in the end, I walked away not just with freedom, but with the very symbol of their authority. So here's my question to you. If someone tried to take what's yours, your home, your dream, your freedom, would you bow down, or would you rise up? Because the truth is, every bully, every system, every so-called authority has cracks. And sometimes, if you push back hard enough, you don't just survive, you win bigger than you ever imagined. If this story hit you, if it made you think, or if you've ever fought for something that was yours, then hit that follow button. Because this isn't just my battle, it's a reminder for anyone who's ever been told, you can't. Because you can. And sometimes, you'll win in ways nobody sees coming. When I bought the HOA clubhouse in cash, the look on their faces was something I will never forget. The same people who once held power over me sat frozen, speechless, and pale. They had spent years trying to bend me, break me, and bury me under rules. But now, in one moment, the ground shifted. The hunter had become the hunted. That night, word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Neighbors called me. Some laughed in shock. Some whispered with disbelief. Others cheered, saying, "You did what we all wanted to do but never had the courage for." Suddenly, the man who had been fined for his barn, his animals, and his barbecues became the man who took down the very board that tried to silence him. And let me tell you, victory tastes sweeter when it's earned with scars. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Winning doesn't always feel like fireworks at first. After the deal was done, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the contract. My hands trembled. My heart raced. I thought back to the nights I almost gave up. I thought back to the moments when I doubted myself, when I asked if I was crazy to fight something so big. And now, here I was, the owner of the place where they plotted against me. It was surreal. It was powerful. It was justice. The next HOA meeting was legendary. Picture this, the same room where they once scolded me, where they once threatened me, where they once called me a troublemaker, now it was mine. I walked in, not as a guest, not as a target, but as the owner. The gavel they used to bang with authority now sat on my table. Their silence was louder than any speech I could have given. Neighbors filled the room that day. Some came out of curiosity. Some came out of support. Some came because they couldn't believe it was real. And when I stood up, I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply said, "This place belongs to me now. And no one here will ever be bullied again." The room erupted in applause. People stood. People cheered. And for the first time, I felt not just victorious, but free. You see, freedom isn't just about land or buildings. Freedom is about knowing no one can dangle fear over your head. For years, I felt trapped under their rules. But now I held the key. But let me tell you something important. This wasn't just about me. This was about every neighbor who ever felt small. About every family who paid fines they didn't deserve. About every voice that was silenced in the name of rules. My victory became their victory. My fight became their courage. And slowly, things began to change. People who had stayed quiet started speaking up. Neighbors who had once paid every fine without question began asking, why? The HOA board, stripped of their fortress, no longer had the same grip. They couldn't threaten, they couldn't intimidate, and they couldn't hide behind walls anymore. Their power wasn't just broken, it was gone. And the irony, they had given me the fuel to do it. Every fine, every threat, every sleepless night, they thought they were weakening me. But they were actually sharpening me. They made me stronger, tougher, and smarter. Without their constant pressure, I would never have been ready for this fight. Sometimes, your enemy is your best teacher. Owning the clubhouse also gave me choices. Big choices. Some neighbors asked me to turn it into a community center. Some wanted me to rent it out for weddings, birthdays, and events. Others suggested I should tear it down as a symbol of victory. But deep inside, I knew what I wanted. I wanted it to be a reminder. A reminder that no one, not even a board with fancy papers and stamps, gets to take away your freedom. So I left the building standing. Not as their fortress anymore, but as a symbol of resistance. On the wall, I placed a plaque that read, "This land was bought with courage, not fear." And every time someone walks by, they see it. They remember it. They feel it. Neighbors began sharing their own stories with me. Stories of being fined for silly things. Stories of being threatened for harmless choices. Stories of tears, anger, and silence. And as they spoke, I realized something. My story wasn't rare. It was everywhere. People across neighborhoods, across towns, across states, they were all living under the same shadow. And too many had given up without a fight. That broke my heart. But it also fired me up. I started speaking out. I started sharing my story, not to brag, but to inspire. I wanted people to know they had rights. I wanted them to see that HOA boards are not untouchable. That power only works if you hand it over. And slowly, messages started pouring in. People from across the country wrote to me, saying, "Your story gave me the courage to fight." Some told me they had won their battles. Others told me they finally spoke up at a meeting. Some just said, "Thank you for reminding me that I am not alone." And that's when it hit me. My ranch wasn't just my dream anymore. It had become a beacon. A symbol of standing tall when the world tells you to bow down. But let me be real with you, it wasn't easy. Winning came with a cost. I lost sleep. I lost money. I lost peace during those years of constant fighting. But every cost was worth it. Because today, I wake up every morning, look at my land, and smile. Not because I own it, but because I earned it. And maybe that's the lesson here. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room. You don't need to be the richest, the strongest, or the most powerful. You just need to refuse to break. You need to hold on when everything pushes you to let go. Because sometimes, the very thing they try to use against you becomes the weapon that wins your war. The HOA tried to take my ranch. They tried to strip me of my dream. But in the end, I took their house. And I didn't just buy a building, I bought my freedom. So, if you're listening to this, maybe you're facing your own fight. Maybe it's not an HOA. Maybe it's a boss who disrespects you. Maybe it's a system that keeps holding you back. Maybe it's people who tell you you're not enough. Whatever it is, remember this: nobody has the right to take away what you've earned. Nobody has the power to silence you unless you let them. And maybe, just maybe, if you stand your ground long enough, you'll not only protect your dream, you'll take theirs too. So let me ask you, what would you do if someone tried to take your freedom? Would you give up, or would you fight back? Because the truth is, the choice is always yours. If this story inspired you, if it reminded you of your own strength, then don't just scroll away. Hit follow. Share this with someone who needs courage today. Let's build a world where no one bows to fear, where no one gives up their dream, and where every battle ends not with defeat, but with victory. Because sometimes, the best way to win is not just to fight back. It's to buy the very ground your enemy stands on.